Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Strong Draws. My name is Brett Strong, and today we are working on the inks for the pinup of the character Jarhead that I was commissioned to do. Um, Today we are going to be flying through this because I wanted to get it all into one video. The whole inking process took roughly 8 or 9 hours, and so I've compressed it down to just under 25 minutes, so it's going to be really hustling through here. So, as usual, I am in Manga Studio 4EX, and I've brought the line work from Photoshop, turned it blue, and here we go. Using the 0.15 magic marker tool that I always use to start off with just kind of the baseline work, and then we'll go to the bigger one for the contour lines, and then eventually line weights later. So, as you see, just kind of going in, solidifying everything, adding things here and there. The client did just decide that, or told me after I got done with the pencils, that he wanted gloves and more weapons on the character, specifically a grenade belt and a knife, an army knife, I think, attached to his leg. So you'll see as we go along that will get added um, to the drawing as well. So again, just the kind of the way I work is, I try to keep it as close to the traditional things possible. So this kind of gives me that pigment micron look that I like, and that I kind of get when I do traditional inking work. It's just kind of the way the look I've kind of got used to and learned how to work well for me. So that's what we're doing here. Um, Again, I use my Wacom Cintiq 12WX. And I know there's something I know I've addressed it in other videos, but I haven't talked about it in a while. But as far as when I'm working digitally, you can see I'm pretty zoomed in at the moment, and for the I guess most of the video, I'm probably a little closer than I should be. But I do have my second monitor, which does have either a full view of the character or the drawing that I'm working on, or at least um, what it would look like to scale. And so I can keep an eye on what I'm doing so that I don't overwork a certain area, that when it's um, reduced into a comic page, that a lot of the detail gets muddy and or lost. So if you're working digitally, make sure, if you want to work zoomed in, as far as I am here, open that second window up and keep an eye on it, because otherwise you can get in real close and start getting a lot of detail that no one will ever see, and it just ends up costing you more time in the end. In Manga, I'm trying to think of how to do that in Manga Studio. I think it's up. It's in the toolbar. I think it's window, and then in there's a tab that'll say open new window, and then you just slide that over to your other monitor if you have that option. So again, just going in here, working on the boots. You'll see that my pencils, at least if you haven't seen the pencil video, you can go watch that. The pencils stay pretty loose in parts, um, just because it saves me a little bit of time uh, to not have to, and it's more fun, and to not have to go and just exactly trace what you drew already. I know there's some guys that do that. To me, it just gets kind of tedious and a little bit boring to just trace what I've already spent um, so much time drawing before. So I like to leave it a little loose in areas. Again, like I was saying in the penciling video, there are certain parts that I want to be perfect or need to be, just such a way. And when I pencil, I make sure that those parts get solidly filled out before I go to inks. Stuff like the face, in this case the guns. I want all that to be pretty solidified before I got here, because here's the thing, I love inking in Manga Studio 4. I hate penciling in it because the pencil tool and the eraser tools just aren't up to snuff, in my opinion, at least not the way I like to use them. So if I have to go back and try and pencil something in here, it's a pain in the ass. And it's also, I don't want to keep jumping between programs and whatnot, and just to add things here and there, so I've gotten to a point where I know exactly where I'm gonna need it to be, and um, then I just go from there. So again, just leaving a little bit open here and there. Now you're gonna see here I'm adding the grenades, and you'll see kind of how I tried drawing it in here, but I went and looked at reference of grenades and tried to figure out um, what they look like, how they need to be drawn. But again, without the proper penciling tools in this program, I was trying to do a quick way around it. I just didn't like it. It wasn't looking, perspective was off, and honestly, the grenade, it's a kind of a tough thing for me to draw, just because even though I've been doing this a while, and you give me anything with a lot of angles or stuff kind of like this grenade, it's a little hard to grasp right off the bat. And so I just found a picture on the internet, and as you can see, just kind of traced it off. I know a lot of people have a big problem with this. I got into a kind of a discussion slash argument where I ended up actually blocking this person from my Facebook feed, because I understand people's thought process, I guess, as saying that real artists don't trace, or you should learn to, just draw it from what. I'll tell you what, I've been drawing since I was a little kid. I would say maybe 4 years old when I first got when I first had a Superman coloring book, and would color the pictures, and then once the pictures were colored, I thought I could do better, so I tried to redraw them so that I could color them again and improve. So I've been drawing for about 26, 27 years, and I still don't know how to draw everything. I mean, it's almost laughable to think that anybody can draw just about anything. I mean, even if you use reference, like I said, there's just certain things like the grenades that there's a lot of stuff in there, and a lot of the way the angles that still kind of baffle me when I'm trying to look at it from reference. And so tracing, I think, really helps in that respect. I try not to do it too much, but at the same time, I could spend 45 minutes trying to get that grenade right, or I can trace the thing in 15 minutes and get them all in there, and then have a better understanding of how they work by tracing it. So I kind of got it down to how a grenade looks and what parts of a grenade and how the angles work and whatnot. So probably the next time I draw it, I can look at a picture. I probably will still use reference. I won't need to trace it because I've already kind of figured out exactly what's going on with it. So, I mean, again, people have a lot of problems against tracing. There's a great interview that Kevin Smith did with Neil Adams on his Batman on Batman podcast, Smodcast, if you will, that you should go check out, where Neil Adams talks about tracing and all this, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it a little bit. If you want to check it out, he goes into a lot more detail, and very passionately about it. It's like, but for people to tell you not to trace is actually hurting you more. There are thousands of doctors out there, really good doctors, but there's only a few hundred good artists, and all those artists know it's okay to trace. And if you're not tracing to improve, then and you wonder why these guys are getting better and you're not, that's why. And I'm not saying plagiarize, don't go take somebody else's work, trace it, pass it off as your own. You use tracing as a learning tool, and in this case it was a speed thing because I had to get this poster done on time. And it was, and also in this case, it's a very small part of the piece. You know, I think it's a necessary part to make sure everything looks right. But at the same point, you know, 95 to 97% of this was all drawn. So I mean, I have no problem with the fact that I traced them, but some people seem to. And again, it's just it's a way to learn and it's a way to get better. And if you want to do this, I'm assuming the people watching this are artists and or comic book artists and or aspiring comic book artists like myself. And I think if you guys want to improve and get to that point, I think it's a necessary evil to learn by tracing. And I mean, I've heard Jim Lee talk about it. I've seen like other videos of professional artists where they do it. I mean, so if you have a problem with it, sorry, but you can either, excuse me, take the advice of some of the pros and the greats, or you can not. And I understand that, you know, I'm a very stubborn individual myself. So getting past that was kind of a difficult thing for me. A lot of the stuff I do nowadays took me a lot of work and um, a lot of changing my old mindsets. Excuse me, to get it right, or to do some of the things like building the understructures the way I do and all this. I mean, it's all very basic, simple stuff that I thought I was above or didn't need, but the older I get, and the better I get, the more I learn is that to get better, you kind of have to put your own ego aside and just do whatever you have to make yourself better. And so, anyway, during that little rant, I moved on to using the Maru brush. No, I'm sorry, I use the G pen nowadays to do my line weights and add texture and on the guns, a little bit of a metal sheen and stuff of this nature. And I've added the knife to his leg, so. Now, as you guys, now from the client requested, he didn't want a lot of solid blacks in this, so he didn't want it heavily shadowed, so on and so forth. Now, having said that, I've never used, well, I do sometimes, but very rarely do I use a lot of heavy blacks and cross-hatching and shading. Actually, on this piece, mainly what you'll see for the hatching work is mostly to show texture and or just to kind of emphasize shape and form. Like in here, this is more to show texture of his knee pads than to actually show light and shadow. And the more, again, the more I do this, the more I'm learning that I kind of like the simpler looks, the not so heavily darkened and rendered stuff that's, you know, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Just to me, for my work, I don't think it's necessary. The stuff I've been looking at a lot lately is, again, I believe I've mentioned these guys before, but like Ryan Otley, John Romita Jr., and Greg Capullo, who does do some cross hatching and shading that way, but I don't know. I'm getting more attracted to these simplified artists, the more line work, less, you know, cross hatching and shadowing. The less again, more the Ryan Ottley's, less the David Finch's. And so, you know, again, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but where I technically should have been a 90s kid as far as comic book reading, but didn't really have them where I was growing up. So a lot of the comic book artists I look up to or admire or, you know, came from the early 2000s, I don't know, after we moved out of that 90s. And I mean, the 90s, from what I understand, and, you know, I've read some of the books, you know, from friends have given me some of the books from then. And, you know, you can look up the artwork real easy. You know, the Sylvestris, the Liefelds, the Lees, the, you know, McFarlanes of that time. And they were very, very into the cross hatching and the heavy blacks. And there was a line which I guess came from Wally Wood. Um, don't quote me on that, but I know I heard um, Liefeld and McFarlane, and I think Jim Lee talk about it on one of the old cassette tapes that had an interview with him. I think it was, what was it? There's Stan Lee put out a few of these, like a series of these. It was comic book greats, excuse me, and he had all kinds of guys on there. They're really cool. I think they're up on YouTube if you go check it out. Or at least most of them are. But there was one with, I believe, like I said, I think it was Liefeld, Lee, and McFarlane, where they were kind of talking about when in doubt, black it out. And I just don't really, I don't know. Just when you get overly rendered and stuff of this nature, it just doesn't really work. I'm going to come back to this, but I was talking about my last video kind of using how to do these buildings and how to use keystones to kind of be able to express what's going on here. And what I was talking about is as the buildings goes from right to left, it gets more and more decrepit, but the right side is a little more stable other than the broken windows. And what that does is you can see in between each window there's kind of a bit of paneling, I guess, that separates them. And by using something like that throughout the buildings, and you'll see as I start to texture it a little bit and start to add a little bit of shadow and form to it, that if you keep that part, like especially when it's colored, I mean, you'll see these lines and you'll see what I mean as it's starting to get rendered out a bit. But if you use these keystones of these buildings, like these panels between the windows, as you go through, it'll kind of help sell the fact that this building that's now basically folded on top of itself looked like this building when it started. You'll, again, as we'll see, we're coming closer to this. So you'll see, like, I used all these vertical hatching lines to show kind of the texture of it a little bit. And you see me adding them here now to show that, you know, that's that part of the building. So it kind of, so at a distance or at a glance, again, especially if it ever gets colored, I'm not going to color it, but I've been told it's going to be colored. It'll help carry that through so that you can kind of see what it used to be and where it is now. So again, if you're going to tear something up like this, if you can find ways to make people see points or see similarities, or like I said, I call them keystones, I guess, of what it was and where it is now. That'll help sell the, you know, kind of help bring cohesiveness to the confusion that is the crumbled, messy, destroyed building and just mess of lines. So again, if you have any questions of what I've done or how I'm doing something, because again, going really quick here, or characters you'd like to see me draw, anything, feel free to put them in the comments below. So anyway, as I was talking about with with the when in doubt, black it out. It just, I don't know. I understand with and I've heard Tom McFarlane kind of express this a little bit. I watched his kind of documentary. I guess it was a documentary about him kind of talking about how he got into the comics field and kind of what he did and his approach to things. And it's one of those, I don't know. I had a different opinion of him after watching it, but that's neither here nor there. But I mean, silhouettes can be a great tool. Um, he made it sound more like they were doing it because he wanted to spend more time on one panel than the other because of deadlines, which I understand makes sense. But I feel if you can rely less on dark shadows and cross-hatching to cover up certain things, I think you benefit more from it. And personally, I like the look of it better. Again, if you do that kind of stuff, more power to you. It's just for me, it's not my thing. Like, and I like artists that do it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, again, I've said I love David Finch's work. He's a very blacks and render heavy person. But the thing about that is to me, with all the render lines the way he does it, makes everything look very much made of stone or rock or something. Which, if that's what he does, it's impressive how much he's able to express by doing that. But it's just not for me. So what do you? I mean, I guess do you guys prefer this new kind of open style that comic book artists seem to be having, as opposed to like the '90s, render the hell and the tick marks throughout the whole thing? I mean, what do you guys think? I guess. So here we're working on the other shattered building that this character Jarhead is, I guess, allegedly destroyed and just kind of walking away from. Just adding more texture lines and a little bit of blacks here and there, just to give some depth to the drawing here. And I know people tend to not like drawing backgrounds, but it's part and parcel of the job, kind of a necessary evil, and something you have to learn to do. And so, honestly, like for the buildings, it kind of becomes fun, kind of relaxing at a certain point because you just kind of zone out and you're just drawing shapes more than anything. So, I don't know. The more I get, the quicker I get at drawing people, the more fun I'm starting to have drawing backgrounds because it's just something different. Alright, guys. About to wrap up here. Just going to add a few more details here and there. Use the airbrush tool to add a little bit of ink spatter and a little more texture to the piece. So as always, we'll have the picture there at the end to kind of show you. You can check out the full res on my Facebook and Deviant page. Links are in the description below. So thanks for watching, guys. I know this is a little bit of a longer video. And I will be back next week with another one, hopefully. So here's a big shot of it. Again, follow me on Facebook and Twitter to find out if you get any more new updates. So thanks for watching again, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye.